We bring in now, which I think many of you out there question based on the videos that you and we have all seen, but we bring in now Ian Miller, who has done fabulous work at IanMSC on Twitter. He's been putting out graphs for years now, analyzing masking and how ineffective it is. He writes at OutKick now.
I was going to say, Ian's mask graphics, when I was doing 5 hours of radio a day by myself in my apartment under lockdown in New York City, raging about the stupidity of masks. Ian, your graphs kept me safe and warm. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to know. They were so helpful.
I would have gone crazy if I had to live like Buck was living in New York City. I'm not. I really legitimately think I would have gone crazy. I'm glad I lived in a red state. You live, I believe, Ian, in L.A., correct, or the L.A. area. What's going to happen with masking? You went through this. You've written about it, data analyzed it. Where is this all headed as tomorrow we officially enter into September, and everybody out there knows cold and flu season every year happens in the fall, winter, as people spend more time indoors. So this certainly with COVID and everything else is bound to increase. What's going to happen in your mind?
Yeah, I think a lot of us were really worried about what was going to happen down the road after experts and the CDC and Fauci and all these other politicians kind of committed to saying that masks were effective against respiratory viruses, despite overwhelming evidence and all the graphs that I've done. But there's a lot of other work out there that's proved this over time, including by the CDC and the World Health Organization. But once they committed down that path, there was no way for them to get out of it. And we're seeing it now where you have the media and you have these expert organizations saying, oh, we need to bring back masks. There's a new COVID variant. As we get into respiratory virus season in the winter, as these cases go up, I'm very worried in LA. Just one quick example, the Lionsgate story where this major Hollywood studio reinstated mask mandates, they came out and put out a statement saying that they didn't do it. LA County Public Health told them they had to because there was an outbreak of COVID cases. So if LA County Public Health is already doing this at individual businesses, how much worse is it going to get as, COVID numbers probably increase here into the fall and the winter? I'm very concerned that we might see some of these policies come back to some extent.
Do we have some gold standard real studies specifically that have been done in, let's say, the last 6 to 12 months that just show people what they should have known all along? But, for the left, this is a religious belief now. I mean, masking is a religious belief. But do we have anything, Ian, you point people to that just says, go look at the such and such study. This stuff, masking, does not work really at all. I mean, it's statistically effectively zero.
Right. Yeah. There's the Cochrane Library, which is kind of considered to be the gold standard of evidence reviews, where they just take the highest quality evidence. Usually it's randomized controlled trials. They examine what the data shows, and then they release a conclusion. They did this, I want to say maybe 6 months ago or so, on masking to stop respiratory viruses, and they found that all the available high quality evidence showed that they did not stop respiratory virus transmission. I mean, that should have been, there's been 25 times where it should have been the end of masks permanently. But if anything was going to do it, for all these people that claim to be following the science and following the evidence, that should have been it. It should have been over. But it can never be over because it's not really actually about the science and the evidence, right? It's about doing whatever is politically expedient at the time. But there is this Cochrane Library review. I wrote about it for OutKick. I've mentioned it in the books and other work I've done. We've known this for a while. They did this review in 2020, and it said the same thing. Nothing has changed. Masks never worked, and there's no evidence that's changed that over the last couple of years.
Ian, what we saw happen a lot over the last several years is there was almost a race for everybody to reinstitute mandates, right? It was like a left-wing race. And so you would see a city like Philadelphia or a city like Washington, D.C., or L.A. or New York City, a place that is only run by left-wing politicians. One of them makes that decision, and then you would see everybody else rush to follow. L.A. has been one of those cities in the past. I know we're just sitting here on August 31st, but do you think a city will reinstitute a mask mandate? Will they try? And if they do, will it work?
Right. I think that's the question we're all wondering. I would say if there is a city that's going to do it, LA would probably be the one. Last summer they tried to do it in July, just over a small increase in COVID cases, and there was immense pushback, and they kind of backed down. But they were sending out guidelines preparing agencies to enforce another mask mandate. I don't see why that would change now.
Yeah, that's important. You live in L.A. Do you think enough people in the L.A. area, certainly in Orange County, I think it's happened. For people who don't know L.A. well, Orange County to the south tends to vote more Republican, certainly, than L.A. County. But do you think enough people in L.A. have finally gotten and realized that masking doesn't work? Or do you think they would just meekly acquiesce and masks would sprout up everywhere all over again?
I think that there's still enough people that would comply with it that it would be followed here in LA. I think that we saw that. I thought it would have been over long ago that people would stop complying, but there really isn't an end to compliance. If there is a mandate in place, people will follow it. I do think the percentage of people who don't want a mask anymore or who have admitted that it doesn't work has grown over time, even in places like LA and DC and San Francisco. But it's still too high among the left because they can't admit that they were wrong. They don't want to acknowledge that they made these mistakes and that the authority figures that they followed misled them for 2 or 3 years. That's not an acceptable solution for them. So I'm worried that there are still enough people that it would be followed, it would be enforced across places like LA. Yeah, like I said, Orange County, San Diego, not necessarily, but LA, San Francisco, those kinds of cities, I could definitely see it coming back. And even if it's not a general mandate, it could go back into healthcare settings or on public transit, which is limited but still bad enough and really, hurts a lot of people. Even in those fields. So I'm definitely worried about that.
Ian, if you decide to triple mask in response to LA's possible mask mandate, will you promise us you'll take video of you walking around telling Los Angelinos who only have 1 or perhaps 2 masks that they're upsetting you? You're literally shaking right now because they don't take the virus seriously.
I love that idea. I think it's a great comedic bit of men on the street, just me walking around with 3 masks. They're double duct taped to my face, telling people that they're not doing enough to stop the
I
virus.
guarantee you, if you walked around, and this would be true in New York as well, if you walked around with a cloth mask with an N95 on top and a cloth mask on top of that, and you went up to people and said in those places, this is the safest way to be, you would convince people to triple mask. I promise you. There's no doubt. I would put money on this.
100% believe that. It's really become like you said, it's become a religion. It's very frustrating to see it.
Go check out Ian's work at OutKick.com. Clay has one more thing for you.
Yeah, one quick question, maybe the most important so far. You're in L.A. You're a big Dodgers fan. Are you willing to acknowledge that the Atlanta Braves are the best and most superior team in all of baseball this year?
I won't acknowledge it on the record, but off the record, maybe we'll have that conversation. No, the Braves are incredible this year. The offense is like one of the best I've ever seen. I really I've been already talking about avoiding them in the playoffs if we get that far. So hopefully they can get out in the NLDS. We don't have to worry about it.
Ian, go check out his work at OutKick.com. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.